For a certain generation of comedy fans, Reggie Watts felt like he had arrived from the future. Big afro, loop pedal, beatboxing, fake intellectual speeches that sounded incredibly intelligent until you realized he wasn't actually saying anything. Then he'd suddenly switch into that ridiculously convincing, almost David Attenborough-style British voice before building an entire song from nothing. And somehow it worked.
Des fois on peut voir, parce que les gens ici faire des choses, on peut manger. Mais quand tu es fâché avec quelqu'un, c'est for the first time. And that's one of the things that I enjoy most about this convention.
In 2010, Fuck Shit Stack became one of those early internet comedy videos that people would send around like they discovered some strange new genius. The joke was brilliant in its stupidity. Reggie took all the cliches and profanity associated with certain kinds of hip-hop, stripped them of any meaning, and stacked them on top of each other over a genuinely good beat. It sounded ridiculous. It also sounded amazing.
I like women. I like women. I like the concept of a woman. I like to take that concept and reduce it to an object. I like to take those objects and put them in my videos.
That was Reggie's whole thing. You were never completely sure whether you were watching a comedian, musician, performance artist, or somebody having an extremely sophisticated nervous breakdown. Even Brian Eno once admitted he couldn't really work out what Reggie was. Critics were throwing around words like genius, original, and inventive. And by the beginning of the 2000s, Reggie Watts felt like one of the coolest people in alternative comedy. He toured with Conan O'Brien. He became a huge part of Comedy Bang Bang. Then he became James Corden's bandleader on The Late Late Show. He had somehow turned making weird noises into a legitimate Hollywood career, which makes what is happening now particularly strange. Because over the last few days, Reggie Watts has started disappearing. His longtime theme music was suddenly removed from the latest episode of the Comedy Bang Bang podcast. The week before, it was still there. Now it isn't. No explanation has been given publicly. Festivals have also started removing him from their lineups. Greenbelt and Shambhala in the UK have dropped his scheduled appearances. He's also disappeared from the Electric Picnic lineup in Ireland, while a series of Bristol performances with the band Kapyak were cancelled. And all of this follows a disturbing Rolling Stone investigation into Reggie's relationships and his attitude towards drugs. At the center of the report is Reggie's late former girlfriend, Catherine Early McCulloch.
For the people that want to know what Reggie Watts did, I'm going to TLDR it for you. Okay, love bombing, creating an intensely romantic, generous dream life at the beginning, lavish travel, constant attention, gifts, and sweeping promises. He did that with Catherine. These are all things he did with Catherine. Intermittent reinforcement. Mind you, this guy's 52, okay? So he's old enough to know. Intermittent reinforcement, eroding self-esteem, positioning himself as her superior or teacher, like saying she has flaws and he needs to guide her to higher consciousness. Spiritual manipulation, using ideas about consciousness, ego awakening, and medicine to rationalize drug use. Pressuring friends and partners to take drugs. Shaming people who declined drugs. Making intimacy conditional on substance use. Disregarding drug boundaries. Dangerously administering excessive doses.
McCullough's friends and family allege that her drug use increased dramatically during their relationship and that drugs, particularly ketamine, became a major part of their life together. Reggie has publicly advocated for ketamine and psychedelics for years. According to the reporting, McCullough experienced a drug-induced manic episode in 2025. Their relationship ended later that year. In March 2026, McCullough died by suicide. Her family and friends believe Reggie's attitude towards drugs contributed to the path she went down. That is their allegation.
This is also Catherine's earring too, she gave me. So I'm always going to be, well, she's always going to be with me. And I've gotten some great messages from people who have psychic connections too, telling me that Catherine told them to tell me that she's all right and that she's okay. And however that's received, it's a comfort. And yeah, it's really beautiful. And as for myself, I'm processing, with myself and with other people. But the good thing is I really love myself so much. I have a really great relationship with myself. And that is really getting me through right now. A lot of meditation and introspection, and of course running through all the thoughts of, could this have happened? Could that have happened to change things? But in the end, it is the way that it is. And I have to say, the way that she chose to go was pretty elegant in many ways, at least from my perspective. She was very, very intentional about it, and she had a partner that she found on a forum, and they did this thing together. So she wasn't alone. And she had many beautiful moments in Lima, by the sea, in a sculpture garden, an installation art place. And they stayed in a really nice hotel and rented a cute Airbnb, and ended things there. And yeah, I've grown to accept that as what she chose, and I will honor that. Anyways, thank you for your continued.
It's extremely important to make clear that Reggie Watts, through his attorney Andrew Brettler, strongly denies responsibility. His lawyer called attempts to connect Watts to McAuliffe's death dangerously false and said she had experience with drugs before their relationship and did not require encouragement from him. He also denies allegations that Watts was an abusive boyfriend, but the Rolling Stone investigation doesn't only contain allegations involving McAuliffe. 5 other women who previously dated Watts reportedly described what they saw as reckless or selfish behavior involving drugs. 2 of those women characterized their relationships with him as emotionally and psychologically abusive. Again, Watts denies allegations of abuse.
You're quite the psychedelic traveler. I've spoken against psychedelics on this show before, and I truly, because partially I get a little judgy around it.
The circles I travel in, it's almost all fueled by ketamine, I would say. But I will say that it's not alcohol. People don't drink alcohol generally on ketamine. And also you wouldn't want to drink alcohol and ketamine. I think alcohol is one of the most inefficient, unnecessary substances on the planet. What I enjoy about psychedelics and ketamine, and again, I'm never out there going guys, everybody do this. I mean, sometimes I joke about that, but it's, even when I enter into communities where people are doing ketamine and they're doing it as a party drug, I'm always bringing it back to, what are you feeling? What are you thinking about right now? Have you noticed this? Have you noticed that? Because in the psychonaut community, when you go on a trip, every single trip that you take is an opportunity to learn more about yourself.
Reggie Watts is probably one of the last comedians many people would have expected to see at the center of allegations like these. And I caught myself thinking something stupid when I first read the story. He doesn't look like the type. But what exactly does the type look like? That's the trap. There isn't an abuser uniform. There isn't a particular haircut. People accused of terrible behavior don't necessarily walk around looking threatening. Sometimes they look like the gigantic friendly guy with the afro making funny robot noises. And maybe that's partly why these stories involving comedians repeatedly surprise people. We've seen major controversies surrounding Louis C.K., Chris D'Elia, Bill Cosby, and plenty of others. That's not evidence that comedians are somehow uniquely predisposed to abusive behavior. But comedy creates something interesting between performer and audience: false intimacy. A comedian spends hundreds of hours telling you about themselves, their relationships, their childhood, their insecurities, their sex life, their failures. Eventually, you feel like you know them. And Reggie arguably had an even stronger version of that. His entire persona felt harmless, curious, absurd, almost childlike. He wasn't selling aggression. He was the weird musical genius who could walk onto a stage with a microphone and loop pedal and somehow create an entire universe.
We live on an island, island by the sea.
That persona became part of how audiences understood the person, but a persona isn't a person, and that's worth remembering whenever allegations like these emerge. There is also another uncomfortable part of the Reggie story. Drugs were never exactly hidden from his public image. He has talked openly about psychedelics. Old interviews contain stories about making creative work while high. For years, that probably added to the image of Reggie as this eccentric experimental artist who experiences reality slightly differently from everybody else. In the context of the new allegations, those old stories suddenly sound different.
We put ourselves in different states for different reasons, whether it's a philosophy, if we're like learning a philosophy and we're like, okay, if I think about Taoism in this particular way, or if I practice like, transcendental meditation or whatever the thing that you're using is, they're all self-reflection tools. They're like things that just reveal things about yourself that are innate. There's nothing that adds anything to you. If you take a stimulant, yes, you're wired or whatever, and that is something that is affecting you to be wired, but it's something that is innate in your body.
Plenty of adults use drugs without abusing their partners, but when former partners begin alleging a repeated pattern involving drugs, boundaries, and relationships, the subject becomes considerably more serious. And the comedy industry clearly knows that. Nobody has announced that Reggie Watts is permanently finished. There has been no court finding establishing the allegations described in these reports. But institutions aren't waiting around to see how the story develops. Festivals are removing him, performances are disappearing, and perhaps most symbolically, Comedy Bang Bang has removed the voice that helped define its sound for more than a decade.
Comedy bang bang, 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 comedy bang bang.
For now, these remain allegations. Reggie Watts denies them, but the professional consequences have already begun, and one of the strangest comedy careers of the last 15 years has suddenly entered a chapter nobody watching Fuck Shit Stack back in 2010 could possibly have predicted.